Fire.
That's the best news I heard all week.
On Global.
Wish your skin could bounce back like it used to?
Neutrogena Hydro Boost Gel Cream with hyaluronic acid. It infuses skin with intense hydration and locks it in.
For supple, hydrated skin.
Hydro Boost from Neutrogena.
Take ZzzQuil and sleep like the kids went to Nana's house for the whole weekend. ZzzQuil, the sleep aid that helps you sleep soundly and wake refreshed, because sleep is a beautiful thing.
Pizza Hut's $14.99 dinner box, perfect for game night.
Game night? Croquet? Works for me.
The $14.99 dinner box. A Panalicious pizza, breadsticks, and 5 boneless bites or Cineparts. Order at pizzahut.ca.
Priorin boosts hair growth from within for noticeable results. Try Priorin yourself. Priorin is a supplement that stimulates hair growth from the root to promote and maintain healthy hair. Love your gorgeous. Visit priorin.ca to find out more.
Lost your job?
Don't sign any agreement until you call Kornblum Law at 905 Lost Job.
Call 905.
Single move. 360-degree wheel maneuvers smoothly through tricky turns. A comfy padded seat reclines so your baby can catch some Z's. Smart Trike grows with your child from 10 to 36 months in 5 development stages. You and your baby will absolutely love it.
Nick looks like a Greek god.
Debbie might have a crush on me. She probably does.
If you're talking about it,
it's gonna save the taxpayers. Give it a year, see if it happens.
It's What's Hot Now. Plus, rock and roll legend Rick Springfield opens up about the love of his life and gives a moving musical tribute tour tomorrow on the Meredith Vieira Show.
Thanks to all of my guests for dropping by. My fabulous studio audience, and to you at home for watching. I'll see you next time.
Campaign trail, Justin Trudeau promised what he called a modest hole in the federal coffers, a mere $10 billion. Once elected, oil prices began to tank, and Trudeau began hinting he might have to dig a little deeper. By February, the government was preparing Canadians for an $18 billion crater, and that's before they started to shovel out the money for new spending. Now, Budget Day is here, and we will learn just how big the hole in the coffer really is. Good afternoon and welcome to our live coverage of the 2016 federal budget. I'm Donna Friesen and we're broadcasting today from the foyer of the House of Commons. It's a busy space at the moment. Cameras and crews from all the networks are here, kind of obstacle course of cables and equipment, all of it brought in just for today. We've carved off a spot in one corner, and in the other corner are the stairs where we expect to see the Finance Minister Bill Morneau and the Prime Minister in just a few minutes. The tradition, of course, is for them to walk down those stairs into the foyer of the House of Commons. We're seeing some of his preliminary people come down the stairs now. And that's why we're here, of course, is for the budget, but 2 other major events are casting a sad shadow today. The death of Rob Ford, the former mayor of Toronto, and of course the terrorist attack in Brussels. It happened at the height of rush hour, massive explosions at the Brussels airport and at a metro station. At least 31 people are dead. More than 200 are wounded. It wasn't long before the so-called Islamic State claimed responsibility. Belgium's Prime Minister calls it blind, violent, and cowardly. It's on everyone's mind here. Justin Trudeau called it deplorable and says Canada stands with Belgium and Europe. We'll have complete coverage of all of that and, of course, the death of Rob Ford as well later on Global National. But for now, on to the budget. This is a big moment for Bill Morneau. He's a rookie finance minister under a rookie prime minister, and this is the Liberals' first budget. It's the moment we will learn whether the Liberals will deliver on all those campaign spending promises they made and how much it will cost all of us. Our chief political correspondent, Tom Clark, is here today. Great to see you, Tom.
Hi, Donna.
So this rookie prime minister, rookie finance minister, how much is riding on this today?
Well, I think what's riding on it is our interpretation of the next 3 years of the Liberal government, because this is really the first time that we're going to see the choices that Justin Trudeau has made. And in politics, as you know, everything is about setting those priorities, making those choices. So in literally about 2 minutes from now, we'll find out who he has disappointed and who he has honored with money.
And he has made a lot of promises throughout the campaign. They've telegraphed that they're going to deliver, or at least try to deliver on a lot of those. It's going to cost them a lot.
It is. He has a 4-year mandate, so he can do it over 4 years. He doesn't have to do everything right now. But as you pointed out at the beginning of the program, you know, what conspired against the best laid plans of his promises during the campaign was the collapse in oil prices. That means there's a collapse in tax revenue. That means that the government is operating, instead of on 4 cylinders, is now down to about 2 cylinders. And that really does change everything. But we're going to see how much he's going to recognize that and how much he's going to say, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
Right. All right. We're going to come back to you for sure, Tom, a little later in the broadcast. Every government goes through a honeymoon period, of course. The Liberals still well in it, apparently. The way we measure that is by doing some polling, and that's what Daryl Bricker and his people at Ipsos do for us. Daryl Bricker is in Toronto this afternoon. Welcome, Daryl. Daryl, can you give us a snapshot of how the Liberals are perceived right now based on your polling?
Well, they're having actually a very good honeymoon period, an extended honeymoon, I would say. They are perceived quite positively by the Canadian public, and everybody's anxious to see what they're going to come up with today.
All right, and I think, Daryl, I'm afraid we're going to interrupt you. There's the finance minister. That's the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister walking in. As soon as the Finance Minister stands in the House of Commons and begins to deliver the budget, we can bring it to you. Daryl, let's get back to you for a moment just while we wait for the Finance Minister. The Liberals got elected on the promise of a deficit. Are Canadians still on board with that?
Well, provided it's at $10 billion, yes, they are. 73% say to us that it's okay. But the higher the deficit gets, the more uncomfortable the public gets with it.
And what about confidence in the economy? That's not such a rosy picture, is it?
Well, our economic confidence numbers right now are the lowest we've seen in a generation. And the real interesting part is the people who feel most in crisis are usually the people who are the most confident, and that's people in the province of Alberta. So when you ask people right now if they think the economy's in a crisis, 58% of us say that we feel that way.
So there's a bit of a disconnect there, isn't there, in terms of the popularity of the government, but the kind of discontent about the state of the economy?
Well, it's kind of a hope versus reality sort of situation, where you see the public being hopeful about the government, recognizing that there's a crisis, and they want to see the government meet that crisis.
Interesting. And you asked Canadians too, Daryl, if Trudeau's heart is in the right place, I guess you could say. What did they tell you about where they want the money spent?
Well, they actually tell us that healthcare, jobs, and the economy in general are the 3 places that they'd really like to see the money spent. And healthcare is usually there because people see the government as being primarily responsible for that. Jobs a little bit lower because they really don't know exactly what the government can do to produce jobs. So they're waiting hopefully today to hear what the government has planned for us on that front.
All right, Daryl Bricker, thanks so much. We're just taking a look inside the House of Commons now, where the Finance Minister has now arrived. He's getting a round of applause from his Liberal colleagues. Let's listen in for a moment.
To remind those in the galleries that they're not permitted to make a noise or applaud in the House will now proceed to the consideration of Ways and Means Proceedings number 2 concerning the budget presentation.
Government order, consideration of Ways and Means number 2, budgetary policy in the name of the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Morneau, seconded by Mr. LeBlanc, moves that the House approve in general the budgetary policy of the government. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Bravo.
Monsieur le Président, je prends aujourd'hui la parole devant la Chambre pour déposer les documents budgétaires de 2016.
We don't like to interrupt Bill Morneau, but this is the moment that he has begun to deliver the budget, so we can reveal what is in it. Journalists and economists have been poring over it for hours in a lockup. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Jacques Bourbeau was one of them.
Mr. Speaker, I'd first like to start by acknowledging the tragedy in Brussels today and say that our hearts and our minds go out to the families in Belgium who are experiencing such a difficult time. Mr. Speaker, today we begin to restore hope for the middle class. Today, we begin to revitalize the economy. Today, we begin a long-term plan that will use smart investments and an unwavering belief that progress is possible to ensure that Canada's best days lie ahead. I know that this can be done. Canadians have done it before. After the dark days of the Great Depression and the Second World War, Canadians believed that the future could be brighter. They believed that if they worked hard and saved, they could get ahead. They could buy a car and a house. They could send their children to college or university. They could look forward to a decent retirement. And they could hope that their children would do even better than they did. Confidence inspired investment. Investment inspired confidence. In the post-war years, Canadians built the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Trans-Canada Highway. They constructed new airports, subways, pipelines, and communication networks. They created new colleges and universities, and parents sent their children to these institutions in record numbers. These investments made the workforce skilled and educated. They connected communities. They improved access to markets. They made the flow of people, goods, and services faster and cheaper. The economy grew rapidly, and Canadians prospered. Hope and hard work were rewarded. Well, Canadians are not so optimistic today, and that's understandable. The decline in the price of oil and other commodities has hurt whole regions and provinces. Economic growth has slowed. The average family's wages haven't grown since the 1970s. I want you to imagine an ordinary middle-class Canadian family. 2 parents and 2 kids in university. The parents have been working for 25 years, but only the bills are growing. There's nothing left at the end of the month. And they don't know if they'll ever be able to afford a decent retirement. It's no surprise that many Canadians feel they're worse off than their parents were at the same age, and that they feel that the next generation will do even worse than their own.
All right, the finance minister is apparently going to deliver about a 40-minute speech about the budget. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Jacques Bourbeau joins me now. Jacques, you've been in the lockup for the last, 8 hours or so.
A long time.
Yeah, poring over all these documents. We saw how many pages this budget is. It's titled "Growing the Middle Class."
Sorry, right here.
You've got it right there. So what are the highlights for you?
Well, in essence, Donna, the Liberals are making a huge bet because they are going heavily into debt over the next number of years. The deficit this year alone is going to be $29.4 billion. Now, keep in mind, during the election campaign, Justin Trudeau said he would cap any deficit at $10 billion. So he's going 3 times over that. I mean, he's blowing way past what he promised during the election campaign. Over the course of the next 5 years, they're talking about adding to Canada's debt by $113 billion. Now, the Liberals are arguing that by doing this, they are going to stimulate economic growth. They are predicting that we are going to see an extra 1% of GDP growth by the end of next year. So they're laying out some markers, and it's going to be interesting to say. As I say, it's a huge political and economic...
Okay. Check audio, check mic, check 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ça devrait être les conservateurs.
Like high school all over again. Right. We could do the Three Stooges.
For big city mayors who thought that $60 billion pot of cash was exclusively for them, that's not the case.
How much are they getting?
Well, in the first, for example, I'll give you one example. When you look at I think they're committing $5 billion for water and waste management over the first 5 years. Almost half of that is going to Aboriginal reserves, not to cities.
So the mayors aren't getting everything that they asked for?
No, I mean, I think there's going to be a bit of disappointment there. You know, one of the other things, I think for Canadian families, this is a big win because the Liberals are putting in their new Canada Child Benefit, and that is going to be at a cost of $23 billion. If I remember correctly, for anybody with a child under the age of 6, you could get a maximum of $6,400. It's around $4,800, I believe, for children between 6 and 17. So it's a significant increase in terms of child benefits from what the Conservatives were offering. But what's interesting, to help pay for this, they're taking away some of those boutique tax credits. Remember the children's fitness tax credit, the arts tax credit? Gone as of next year.
Okay, so give with one hand, take away with the other.
That's right.
Jacques, I'm just going to interrupt you for a sec because we now have you put together a complete package on the details of the budget. We've got that now. Let's go to that.
We will invest $60 billion new dollars.
Out on the campaign trail, Justin Trudeau left a trail of expensive campaign promises, and today's budget gives Canadians the bill. Trudeau is blowing way past his promise of $10 billion deficits. This year, the deficit will hit $29.4 billion. And the Liberals will run deficits for the next 5 years in total, adding $113 billion in debt.
With the growth that we hope to achieve, we believe that we can get to a balanced budget over time.
Now, the Liberals say all the red ink will pay dividends, promising Canada's economy will grow an extra 1% in 2018.
It'll provide a bit of a boost. We're not looking at anything massively game-changing here.
Canadian families will be happy with this budget. A new Canada Child Benefit will pay out a maximum of $6,400 to children under the age of 6, $5,400 for kids between 6 and 17. The cost of the new program, $23 billion. But the Liberals are taking away some popular tax credits. The children's fitness and arts tax credits will disappear next year. Seniors also get a boost. GIS payments will rise up to $947 a year. The Liberals promise to spend $60 billion on infrastructure over the next 10 years, but the majority of those promised dollars are not in this budget. The Liberals will spend $11.9 billion over the next 5 years, $3.4 billion for public transit, $5 billion for green infrastructure, and $3.4 billion for social infrastructure like affordable housing. The Liberals are also investing billions to repair the relationship with Canada's First Nations, investing $2.6 billion for education on reserves, $731 million for housing, $2.2 billion to provide clean water, and $635 million for child services.
We've decided to make very significant investments for Indigenous people in this country.
Oh, it'll be a substantial change. It will, on the waterfront in particular, it will likely come close to the level that's needed to revolutionize on-reserve water systems.
Students and young Canadians will be feeling the love of this budget. Student grants will increase by 50%. And here again, the Liberals are paying for part of this by taking away the education and textbook tax credits. Hoping to grow the economy, there's lots of cash for the Liberals' innovation agenda. $2 billion for a new post-secondary investment fund, $800 million to support innovation networks. The Liberals are also banking that fighting climate change can boost the economy, investing $1 billion in the clean technology sector and setting up a low-carbon economy fund to cut greenhouse gases. This will cost $2 billion. And for those who can't wait for the economy to improve, there's help. The Liberals are expanding access to EI, lowering the number of hours some people need to work to qualify for EI, and expanding the number of weeks of benefits, anywhere from 5 to 20 more weeks.
So we've always had a form of targeting, but I think that they've really taken it to a new level. That's important because the people in Ottawa are not in the same situation as the people in Calgary, where they're experiencing much, much greater pain.
The Liberals are also ponying up to keep a number of other election promises. $78 million for enhanced services for veterans. The CBC gets $675 million over the next 5 years, and there's an extra $256 million in foreign aid.
All right, and Jacques Bourbeau joins me now. Jacques, a lot of promises the Liberals made in their campaign platform. I guess this is where we see whether they deliver.
That's right. This is where the rubber meets the road. And you know, what I found interesting when you look at this document, this is really their first attempt to say, here's how we're going to deliver on the platform. And by my count, there are 178 separate spending promises in this budget document. And what's interesting, I only saw one area where the government's actually promising to tighten its belt. It's saying that the federal government will try to cut $211 million in the area of professional services, travel, and government advertising. One other thing to note, with the Liberals running really large deficits, almost $30 billion in the first year, it goes without saying that balanced budget legislation that the Conservatives passed a while back, that's history.
That's history. All right, Jacques, thanks. Lots of promises made. Not every promise, though, is in the budget, is being delivered on. Vashi Kapelos looks at what's not in the budget.
Donna, there are some major differences between what was in the Liberals' platform and what ended up in the budget, starting with infrastructure.
The Liberals' promise was big, $60 billion for social, green and transit infrastructure over 10 years, billed as stimulus for the struggling Canadian economy. But they're spending just 1/5 of that in their first term in office, about $11 billion over 5 years.
Big cities need help from the federal government. If the federal government doesn't help them, we're just talking about downloading the deficit to the provincial and municipal levels of government.
Just $3 billion is allocated for transit over 3 years, though the government promises more money will flow after that.
We will be coming forward for phase 2 of our infrastructure plan, which will include how we can amplify our money.
Infrastructure money isn't the only thing missing from the budget. The government doesn't mention palliative or home care, both campaign promises and not cheap ones. There's also no revenue booked for legalizing marijuana, an indication it may be further than 4 years away. Veterans will see a big increase in financial support, but during the election, Liberals specifically pledged to re-establish lifelong pensions for injured veterans, and that's nowhere in this budget. Then there's the military. Spending on major equipment, replacing aging CF-18s, for example, is deferred.
And because they can't actually buy things on schedule, they don't need to actually account for the money because they never actually made those purchases.
Even with all that's not in the budget, Liberals didn't just break their $10 billion deficit promise, they blew it up. The deficit will hover near $30 billion for the next 2 years, and that promise to balance the books by 2019, there isn't even a date in this budget for getting back in the black.
In the end, the differences between what was in the Liberals' platform and what's actually in the budget underscore that it's certainly one thing to campaign, another to govern. Donna?
All right, Vashi, thanks. One thing to campaign, another thing to actually be in office and start delivering. And Tom, based on what you've seen so far, I know it's very early days, but not nearly as much for infrastructure in the first term of office, at least as they promised.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, $11.9 billion in infrastructure sounds like a lot of money, but it's way short of what they said they were going to do, which was $60 billion. But you know what strikes me about this, Donna, is that when you start going through the numbers that the budget is based on, they based their budget on the fact that oil is going to be $25 a barrel. Well, guess what? It's already way above that. They've also taken the worst possible forecast for the next few years. And what it does is this, very simply. It says, our projections are going to be that the budget numbers are going to be down here, whereas in reality they're going to be up there, which means, oops, all of a sudden we've got a lot more money. It's a sunnier way 2 or 3 years down the road. It's exactly what Paul Martin used to do with his budgets, which was basically promise terrible storms ahead, knowing that full well the storm was clearing.
So I guess it could be perceived as wise if bending your way to prosperity is what you believe works,
Sure.
Or it's a real gamble.
Well, it is a gamble. You're absolutely right. It is a big gamble. They are gambling on the fact that things are going to be way, way better than what the worst forecasts are going to say. It's going to give them a lot of maneuvering room. They're going to be able to put even more money in 2 or 3 years from now if the price of oil, for example, stays up at $35, $40, somewhere around there, where a lot of people say it's going to be. So there's going to be a lot more money flowing in. One thing I did pick up on, which I thought was really interesting, a lot of tech firms in this country are going to be interested in this. They are not going to tax stock options. That is huge for the entrepreneurial class, the startup tech companies in this country. That's an enormous win for them.
And why is that? Because it helps to attract talent?
It is. It's a way of, when you're starting a brand new company, you've got no money, everybody's 25 years old, and you're saying, work for nothing, but I'll give you shares. The shares may be worthless. Only 3% of startups actually end up making any money. So it's a huge gamble. It was the only way they could attract talent. They said to the government, you're nuts, because in the campaign, the Liberals promised to tax stock options above $100,000. They said, not now, not ever are they going to do a big win for the tech sector.
So the title of this budget is Growing the Middle Class. Based on what you've been able to see so far, what's the benefit for those in the middle class?
Well, first of all, trying to find what the middle class is, and Bill Morneau, in that news conference that he had behind closed doors, wouldn't actually specify exactly what the middle class is. But a middle class is more of a state of mind when it comes to politics. And I think that the tax cut that is in there for people making under $200,000 is going to please a lot of people. And if you look at the numbers, the way I'm looking at them right now, Donna, is that if you're in the upper end of that tax bracket, you're doing a little better than if you're at the lower end of that middle class. But that tends to be the Liberal constituency.
All right. Tom, thanks. We'll come back to you in a bit. This was, of course, the Finance Minister's day, but his critics were listening, and they're delivering their assessments now. The interim leader of the Conservatives, Rona Ambrose, spoke just moments ago. Here's what she said.
D'être fiscalement responsable et d'avoir un plan pour revenir à l'équilibre budgétaire. Rien de tout ça n'apparaît aujourd'hui. Donc, encore 3 promesses qui sont rompues avec la population. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, la population canadienne voit qu'on ne peut faire confiance à ce gouvernement quand il est le temps de gérer l'économie canadienne.
Qui font les mauvais choix. Alors, quels sont ces mauvais choix?
Well, we've taken a first look at the budget, and I can say that from a taxpayer's point of view, this budget is a nightmare scenario. We have the Liberals borrowing way beyond the $10 billion deficit promise. We have no plan to create the jobs that we need in Canada right now, and we have taxes going up. So this is a bad day for the taxpayers of Canada.
Well, Tom Clark, any of that surprise you, what Ron is saying, nightmare scenario for the Canadian people?
No, they probably wrote that speech before they saw the budget because they have to be against the budget. I was just talking to some senior NDP people because Tom Mulcair hasn't come out yet. The NDP is also opposed to the budget, especially when it comes to Aboriginals, because they say that although Aboriginals, First Nations, got over $3 billion, it's not earmarked for specific projects, and we know that there's a range of problems in that area, everything from education to clean water. And so the NDP is saying it's not targeted and therefore it's useless. It's in a big fund as opposed to a specific fund. And the NDP are also saying that, again, they say it is the rich that benefit in this budget and not the middle class that the NDP sees the middle class.
When it comes to green initiatives, that's a big platform, of course, a big priority for this government. What did you see in here that is a green initiative, especially when it comes to infrastructure?
Yeah, municipal wastewater is one of the biggest ones in this country. Every mayor who's listening to us right now will agree with me that says that the thing that eats up those municipal budgets, municipal wastewater, and there is in the infrastructure fund dedicated funds exactly to that. So I think that that's going to be one of those things that is not terribly sexy, as Justin Trudeau said when he was in New York, but there it is. It's necessary stuff, and the municipalities are going to be happy with it.
All right, Tom, thanks so much for joining us on this and helping us through it. Let's take a quick look now through the key points of this year's budget. The deficit this year projected to be $29.4 billion. The cumulative total of deficits over the next 5 years, $113.2 billion. The spending will be doled out in several priority areas outlined by the Liberals during the election campaign. $11.9 billion will go to infrastructure projects over the next few years. The Canada Child Benefit will kick in this July to replace the Universal Child Care Benefit. That program will cost $23 billion. And First Nations in Canada will get $2.6 billion for education over the next 5 years, in addition to $2.2 billion for clean water and wastewater infrastructure. We'll have full details of all of the details in the budget online on Global News and just ahead on Global National a little later tonight. For now, goodbye from Ottawa.
This has been a special presentation from Global National. You're watching Global, part of Shaw.
If you've got kids, you'll love Shaw's free-range TV app. They can watch their favorite shows anytime, anywhere, or even watch offline, thanks to Download to Go Kids shows. So, no matter where you go, Dora goes too.
Thanks, Magic Chicken!
Yes, honey. Magic Chicken. Our kid's weird.
Switch to Shaw and save on TV packages. Plus, get free-range TV included.
Why was a credit union the first financial institution to let you deposit a check by phone? Because improving banking by doing what's right is what cooperative banking is about. We're the Credit Unions of Ontario, where putting you first and improving banking go hand in hand.
We were made for inventing new sports. We were made for wild rides. We were made for the great outdoors. And Polysporin was made for this, and this. Prevent infection for fast and effective healing of cuts, scrapes, and burns with Polysporin topical antibiotic, made for this. And try the Polysporin antibiotic made for pink eye. Conveniently available without a prescription.
PlayOLG.ca is where Ontarians come to play online. Because casino, slots, and lottery, well, they're all in one great place. And with games added often, there's always something new at PlayOLG.ca. It's on. Visit today and check out our welcome offer. Must be 19 or older for casino games, 18 or older for lottery.